All right. Good evening, everyone. It is 5 o'clock, and it is April 23rd, and we are going to hold a special meeting of the City Council of Healdsburg. We have a special meeting agenda item, but before we do that, I'd just like to call to order this meeting and let the record reflect that all 5 council members are here this evening. So with that, I'd like to move to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Okay, and moving on, we have an agenda that's, does it need to be approved in a special meeting? Deputy City Clerk?
Move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right. Aye.
Okay, so moving on, you can see public comments on non-agenda items. We're going to move forward to the old business item, which is the Community Services Department request for street closure, and then we will have public comments because at this point we do have an agenda and this is a special meeting. So with that, I'm going to ask that we move this to Director Thiemig and give us some context as to what we're doing this evening with this item. So thank you, Director Thiemig.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I am here tonight in substitute of our Facilities and Events Supervisor, Dave Jans, who is actually out of the office. So following up, we discussed at the last meeting, first of all, the recommended action tonight is to approve the request to close Plaza Street for the Healdsburg Farmers Market and the Tuesday Concert Series from May 29th to August 28th from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., and then to waive the municipal code that prohibits the consumption of alcohol on city streets. So a little background, last Monday, we had a conversation about the desire to move the farmers market to Plaza Street during the summer times to coincide with the Tuesday concerts and to kind of bring that energy and excitement to the downtown area. The proposal was to close Plaza Street from Healdsburg Avenue to Center Street for the entire day from May 29th to August 28th on those Tuesdays. At the meeting, the council received quite a bit of feedback from the downtown businesses about the impact that that might have on their business and their activities. And so council asked us to meet with the business owners further to talk more about that. We met following the meeting outside the council chambers, and then we also followed up with an on-site meeting the next day. So this map shows what the original proposal was. This is our typical downtown street closure of Plaza Street, where we put up barricades along Healdsburg Avenue and along Center Street. In the concept that's shown here, this is how the farmers market stalls would be set up. They would basically be back to back with their vehicles parked in the middle. There are more stalls that would fit than what show on this diagram. This is just for illustration purposes only. Those market stalls would face both north and south, opened up to the sidewalks on Plaza Street, on both sides of Plaza Street, so there'd be quite a bit of pedestrian access, but there would be the loss of parking on the street during those days. This setup also allows us to do the bike valet that we mentioned at the last meeting, and then other activities that we've talked about, children's activities, arts, things like that. And as I mentioned, this concept was opposed by those businesses along Plaza Street. In our follow-up work, we talked about a number of different options, and I'll highlight what we consider an alternative approach. This would be essentially a one-way street closure. It would be a similar layout where we would have vehicles that would be lined just on the street side or the sidewalk side of the center line. Their booths would be out in front, and there would be pedestrian access along Plaza Street and also along Center Street. What this plan does, though, is it keeps one-way traffic flow on Center Street and along Plaza Street. Based on our conversations with the businesses, they were concerned about the loss of parking and the impact to their stores in terms of delivery and just general availability and access to their storefronts. We could still accommodate the bike valet, the concert staging, and other activities. We have to work out some of the details on where those would be located, but we believe we can still accommodate those in this layout as well. A little bit more on the alternative. I mentioned it does have one-way vehicular traffic. We would request the consumption of alcohol be allowed on both of these streets under this concept because we're not exactly sure where the food vendors would go most effectively, where some of the other activities might be as well. And we certainly don't want our concert attendees to violate the municipal code. When we met with the business owners, we talked about a few other options as well that really, after further conversation with the farmers market, aren't viable for their needs. The first option is shown. It's basically the same option as the proposed recommendation, only the street closure would occur from essentially 3 p.m. until about 9 p.m. In this situation, the farmers market would need to essentially team up with the concerts. Several years ago, they moved away from that because the sales and the impact of the noise and things like that. So that's what that proposal was. And then another concept was to look at closing Plaza Street between Center Street and East Street, have the farmers market set up on that block, and then midday we would switch and we would have the closure of the parking stalls along Plaza Street for the actual concert series. This diagram is probably not realistic because that street is narrow and we're required to maintain a fire lane. So we wouldn't be able to fit their vehicles, tents, and a fire lane on that street. So it would significantly reduce the number of vendors that they could potentially have. So as I mentioned, the other part of this request tonight is to waive the municipal code that prohibits the consumption of alcohol on the public streets. Depending on which option you choose will depend on which streets they're waived on. So it could be Plaza Street or it could be Plaza and Center Street both. So as I mentioned, these are the recommended actions for tonight. I understand Will Holloway from the Farmers Market Board was planning to attend. I'm not sure if he's here yet. And then I also know that several of the businesses are here as well to speak to this item.
Will is here.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, I think it's important to ask questions from the council. So if we could please, and I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with this format to just ask questions to you about process. Okay, so Councilwoman Gold.
So do I understand then that you are recommending the Plaza Street full closure as opposed to the Plaza and Center partial closure?
So, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I think either option would work. This was the original recommendation that was made last week, and so we brought forward that original recommendation. I do think either option we can make work. We're just moving forward with what was proposed last week.
And what kind of feedback did you get from the merchants about the two options, about their preference?
So the merchants are not in favor of this proposal. It's the same proposal it was last week. They did support the concept of one-way closure along Plaza and Center Street.
And does that seems like it serves the same function of providing enough space for the farmers market. Do you feel that it's presents any sort of a traffic safety hazard by converting to one-way when people are used to that being two-way?
So, Madam Mayor, members of the council, we actually talked with both the police chief and the public works director about this concept. We don't think it's a particular safety hazard. There's a couple things that we would do. One is we would require the farmers' vehicles to be parked along the center line of Plaza Street, which would provide a barrier, and Center Street as well. And it's the traffic flow in there, we would have the same restrictions as we would if it were a full street closure. So we would cone off the turn lane along Healdsburg Avenue. There wouldn't be the ability to turn, obviously you don't turn left onto oncoming traffic. So based on the feedback we got from both of those individuals, we think it can work.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilman Yokas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So would there be any utility in perhaps experimenting with either approach? In other words, if we were to say, look, we'll give you the flexibility to decide to take either A or B, and then work with, maybe try 1 week with option A and 1 week with option B, see what the impacts are, and try to be flexible with the different approaches and see which one really has any more negative impacts than the other for either party.
So, Mayor and members of council, I did ask the businesses if they'd be open to considering a pilot where we try, for example, the full street closure for 2 or 3 weeks. I think we need to give it at least 2 to 3 weeks to try it. And again, their concern is about their impact to their businesses. So they weren't supportive, at least when we met last week, about a full street closure on a pilot program either. But that's certainly something that you could discuss with those business owners tonight as well.
Okay, any other questions on council? Okay, I had a question about businesses. So after our council meeting, you were asked to go and get more input from our businesses. How many businesses were available to come, and or are they just the ones on that face of the block? So were they the ones that came, or were there, I mean, because I'm wondering about the people that are now impacted on the other side, even though it's not a total closure. Just wondered if those other businesses were involved at now Plaza Street as well as Center.
So, Madam Mayor, members of the council, they were not, and here's why. The original focus was the closure of Plaza Street. The idea of a one-way closure came up at that meeting, and because of the time constraints and bringing this back to council and trying to keep the farmers market schedule, we weren't able to schedule an entire meeting for the downtown businesses again. My sense is that their concern along Center Street, they would be very concerned if it affected their parking stalls on their side of the street. These areas are used already during the concerts for the band parking and some of the staging that happens. So again, the impact is there, but it's a little bit longer during the day, but there is some impact that's already occurring associated with the concerts.
And by closing it from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., is the city still looking at doing activities during that time that is in between? Remember, that was one of the concepts. Is that still a possibility to
Absolutely. We were thinking about in continuing on the same format of having the vendors along Plaza Street. So one of the things that they've asked for in the past is their ability to park their vehicles adjacent to their stands. And because we've only essentially taken the parking stalls in the past, there hasn't been that space. This will allow them to actually park their vehicles. So somebody like Amy's Wicked Slush, who's got cold product that needs to keep, if she's chosen this year, that could be an advantage to those businesses or to those vendors. And then this opens up this side to do things like the bike valet and other kids activities. Not exactly sure how much space we'd have. We'll have to kind of lay that out if that's the direction that the council decides that you want to go.
And is your staff, or are you flexible in looking at possibilities where we do try things out and see if they work, understanding that that flexibility might be needed when we try different approaches? If we did go for an option to try it and then come back, is your staff pretty flexible that way, that it would
absolutely
work out?
We like pilot programs because it's a pilot. You try it and see what works, what doesn't. You make changes as you move ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there are no other questions, I'd like to open this to public comment, please. So again, you're invited to come to the podium, and we give you 3 minutes. And if you could state your name, and we'd love to hear from you if there's more information or questions that you have. And we're definitely inviting you to come up. So anyone that's here to speak about the question of the farmers market being moved to the plaza on Tuesday mornings and closing some streets to accommodate for that, you're invited to come up now. Are there any members of the public that are going to speak? Thank you. If you could just state your name, please, and give us a context for where you live, if you're willing.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Thank you again, and thanks for taking the time to really deliberate about this. I know that there's a lot of people who really care about what happens, and certainly, everybody loves the farmers market, and everybody also loves effectively paying their rent. So. I think so my name's Christina Stafford. I have Stafford Gallery at the corner of Plaza and Center Street. And actually at the on-site meeting that we did last week, there was Katrina, who has Gallery Lulo. She was able to attend. So she is a Center Street business that's not even directly affected by the Plaza Street closure. And she was surprised to hear about it and was also not in favor. Closing the street still dramatically affects our deliveries. I have large-scale bronzes that get delivered often by sort of union Teamsters, and they have pretty clear rules about what can come off a truck and where it can go. And if I'm lucky, I can get somebody to bring it in the door, but if I can't get it onto the sidewalk, I'm not sure how that's going to work at all. And they have a tendency to be sort of famously stubborn about these things. And that's, that's one example that I can give you. I had, 2 large wood crates from Naples, Florida come on a freight truck, and I had to get them in the door myself. So, and that's just on a logistical level. We're still not really, talking about the impact that it can have on the parking and walk-in traffic to our businesses. But again, the street closure, I think, has a really dramatic effect on our ability to even conduct business, both on a transactional level, but also on a supply level as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Welcome.
Oh, great to be here again on consecutive Mondays, and I thank you guys for looking into this, and Mark, and thank you for your help on this. Last Monday, I bumped into the mayor, luckily, and her advice to me was to acknowledge and to accommodate. And we all acknowledge as business owners the farmers market and their desire to be there, and we want to have a farmers market. The problem with the pilot program for us is we've had a pilot program. We've had numerous street closures, and it shuts our businesses down every single time, no matter what the event is. So it's very disruptive for us, and I know we're all trying to recover from October. And now we've gone through our dead season, and now we're ready to finally try to make the most of prime time here in the tourist season. So to lose a full day for us during peak customer time is really going to be difficult. And we would love to try to do it with the one-way. I think an entire closure, we know what happens when the concert begins. We are dead. And we know when it's been closed for an entire day, it completely shuts all of us down. So I hope you guys really give us the opportunity. If it's going to be a pilot program, our preference would be no closure at all. But if it will be a pilot program, it would be to have the one-way. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward? Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Will. I'm the president of the board at the Farmers Market. And I just wanted to come and say that the market acknowledges that all these businesses they're businesses. All of us have our own businesses that are at the farmers market, whether it's farms or crafts or food. We all have our expenses and everything as well. And so we acknowledge the fact that this is an inconvenience at best to many businesses. I think the one-way option would be a happy compromise that would allow us to have the time frame and location we need without stepping on everyone's heels and allow the logistical aspects to happen. And just like everyone else, farmers felt the fires. Farmers are dealing with all of that. All of us that work these events, that affects all of us. And so it is important to us to be on the square and to be a central part of the community. And so that's essentially just what I wanted to say, is that we're happy to try either way. If it's a pilot, it should be fine. A couple logistical issues with insurance and stuff, but that's not a big deal. So either way would be really appreciated, and I think it would be a valuable thing to the businesses after the initial logistical puzzle. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Welcome.
Welcome, Council. Thank you for letting us speak. My name is Tim Preston. I'm the treasurer of the Healdsburg Farmers Market. I also represent Preston Farm and Winery out in Dry Creek Valley. You know, I've been looking at this for a long time. We've been going back and forth. We've tried the Wednesday market. We tried the Tuesday market on the plaza for a while, and doing it with the music, that just doesn't work. You can also look at the Thursday night market in Windsor and the Friday night market in Cloverdale when they're done in conjunctions with the music there. They just become an outlet for prepared food vendors and farmers. Even though they're called farmers markets, the farmers really don't have any input because we don't make any money. Nobody buys lettuce when they're going to music. We also want to acknowledge that our merchants on the plaza are very important. And the last thing that we want to do is compromise their ability to, turn a profit, because we're all businessmen. We're all very concerned about that. I actually think that while I would love to say, hey, let's close Plaza Street completely and all, that's really not the best option. And I acknowledge that. I've never thought it's the best option for many reasons, one of which it takes away the parking, for another reason it takes away delivery, and it does impact foot traffic in front of the businesses. I think if we're going to move forward with this, and of course I would like it, I have advocated this, I think having a partial closure is the only way that we can work to make it work, or to try to satisfy both sides of this. And there are two sides of this issue. And so if we are going to go forward with this, I mean, I've talked to several of you, and I really think that would be the way to do it. I think it's a good compromise. My only question would be safety. And as long as Chief Kevin is okay with that and all, with traffic going one way, I'm all right with that. And those are my 2 cents for what they're worth. And once again, we really don't want to compromise the ability for the merchants to do their business. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Emma Hughes. I'm the owner of Brush Salon, actually right on the corner of Plaza Street and Healdsburg Avenue. This is my first city council, so I don't really know how to really do this. But I actually found this out last Saturday. So I was not approached at all, and I have a pretty significant business that attracts all locals predominantly to Plaza. And with that closing, the number one complaint that we get from customers and guests that come in is parking, from locals as well as visitors that come into the area as well. So closing down for one full day, Tuesday is actually my top 2 busiest day, and I'm open 7 days a week. It is in my top 2. Every single employee that I have is there on Tuesdays. So to have an entire street closure will significantly impact my business, and I do attract the locals down all day long, and I'm open from 8 a.m. until 5 on Tuesdays. So I would be, as a business owner, I would be more open to this alternative, because having a full street closure would be a little bit more of an impact for customers that I have, since I am right on that corner. I also have spoken with another business owner that could not attend. Her name is Toby Sheldon. She is a manager of Le Lunes, right at the corner of Plaza and Center Street. And she was also, she does not know about this as well, but she was in agreement of not being for the whole street closure. So she wanted me to kind of share that on her behalf as well. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on it. I would be more in for this proposal, the alternative one, than the other one, just because I feel like the other one would be a little bit more of a bigger impact. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else like to come forth and share any questions or concerns? Please, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Shane McAnally. I run 109 and 109A, Duke's Common and Brass Rabbit. I think we all kind of are in agreement on this being the better proposal, and I think the 2 gentlemen from the farmers market in their understanding. My thing, as well as the lack of business, would be the delivery, being the only restaurants on the block. We get anywhere from 6 to 10 to 12 between FedEx and UPS and produce and Preston Farms and just a number of different sources coming every single day, Tuesday included. So I think that would be, for me, a huge logistical thing that I would have to figure out. And I might lose some purveyors because of that. And so I just wanted to make sure that was voiced as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Okay. We're going to be closing public comment. Okay. I move to close. We'll close public comment and move it back to the dais. So Would anyone like to begin? So, McCaffrey, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that there's a solution here that everybody seems to agree with. So I would make the motion that we go with alternative B with the partial closure of Plaza and Center Street.
Any other comments?
Yes, I'd like to. Clearly, if the only topic here were about the market, there's no question, right? But remember, we did talk about exploring the possibility of closing that stretch of Plaza as one of our goals for the year, right? So if we feel that, to me, having a small pilot program of maybe 3 Tuesdays to explore that, to try that out, is like an ideal way to really get some solid real-world experience of what that would look like and of the impact of that change to the local businesses. If we're not willing to do that, then I would say, and I'm fine, I see why we wouldn't, don't get me wrong. But if we're not willing to make a small pilot project like that for 3 days and 3 Tuesdays in a year, then I would suggest we just table the question of that topic as a goal for this year and move on and think about other things.
Vice Mayor Higley.
Actually, I appreciate your comments. However, I agree. I think the one-way option works well. I don't agree in tabling the discussion. I think there is consensus that we do want to explore closing Plaza Street. But I think the discussion needs to be outside of for the farmers market. And I think there are bigger issues where we have delivery. I'd love to see, chairs out there, Brass Rabbit expanding out into it. And I think there's a larger discussion about making that more of a walking, pedestrian-friendly street. And I think it still makes sense to have that on the agenda at some time. But I think those are 2 separate discussions. For me personally, I say we approve the one-way. If there's any minor tweaks, I trust staff to be able to work with. It sounds like both the farmers market and the local businesses are willing to try to figure out how to make it work best for the community. And I really appreciate that. So I would second Councilmember McCaffrey's motion to approve option number 2.
Do we also need to deal with the alcohol consumption part of the question? So I would move that we waive the Healdsburg Municipal Code provisions of Section 9.12, 170A that prohibit consumption of alcohol in public streets, sidewalks, and right-of-ways for the eastbound lane of Plaza Street and the southbound lane of Center Street, Tuesdays, May 29th through August 28th, 2018, between the hours of 5 p.m. and 8 p.m.
Okay. So go ahead, City Manager.
We actually have 2 motions on the
They have
table.
to
So
separate? Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
Let's just vote on Sean's first, if we
Okay.
could, and then we come back. And if there's a second on Sean's, we vote on that one. Then we can come back. If there's a second on Leah's, we can come back and vote. And just to be clear, Councilman McCaffrey, your motion was to authorize one-way street closure, which is referenced up there as alternate A.
Okay.
Right.
Is there any other discussion before we jump into voting? Because I have something to say. I'm going to say it. Communication. We have another item coming on at 6 o'clock tonight that has to do with communication. And I think that it's really healthy to acknowledge and accommodate when we speak, because I think in any situation where people are choosing sides, and literally sides of a block, there's such a metaphor there. So I hope that, we definitely continue to communicate and we do a good job of valuing what the farmers market brings to us. And I think that's why we all support it. Before we vote it in, I just want to mention that the issue of closing Plaza Street, I think we will get a sense of what it's like to close at least one part of Plaza Street and Center Street and get a feel for what that looks like. So I kind of do see it as a pilot in a way, because we're going to try it. At least I can see that, and it will inform us because we will be getting feedback. But I really want to build in communication in this community. I think it's really important that we don't just wait for something to happen, but we actually have conversation that is more flow, so that we're not surprised. And it's not just the business leaders that get surprised. Residents are surprised sometimes about stuff. So I think that it's a really good lesson for all of us to maybe look at when we make changes that we really do put out. And I don't mean just a postcard or, one call or whatever. I think it's important. I love the culture shift on the plaza. I support the farmers market. When I first met with the new farmers market director a few months back, this is what I had in mind was, that L shape So I can absolutely support the motion of McCaffrey, that's seconded by Vice Mayor, but I just want to make sure that everyone realizes that it's really a really wonderful opportunity as our community to get out. And I understand that maybe this will also invite more local restaurants to support local farmers, and they'll have an opportunity to come to the plaza and buy produce in the mornings on Tuesdays, and they don't have to, walk so far. Not that it was that far, but the Cherry Building, 3 North, whatever we're calling it now, it's definitely not centered. And so I'm really proud of this community and this council that they accept that that the farmers market should be on the plaza, especially on those Tuesdays when we already have an event that is, a gathering event. So I support it, but I really just wanted to say that because I think it's a bigger issue. And I really appreciate, Director Thumig, you taking the time to connect with the community, specifically the business. And we get the farmers' support. Sounds like we got a good compromise here. So thank you for letting me share my thoughts, because there's been a lot of conversation, and accommodation doesn't mean you give in. You just acknowledge other people and you accommodate for them. And that's a part of learning, and it's something you teach in debate. And it's a really healthy thing to do as thinkers, to think about other people's perspectives. So thank you for coming and giving the public input. So now we're going to roll, right? We're going to roll to a motion
it's a
that's on the
simple
floor.
motion in a second. We just need a simple vote.
Okay, so
No, we're doing Sean's motion first.
Sean
and then
has
we'll
a
come
motion
back
on the
to
floor.
Leah's.
It's been seconded. So,
By motion, simple vote.
okay, so we just have to say yay or nay?
All in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Opposed? Okay. We have so that motion
Passes.
consensus. The second one was, I believe, Councilmember Gold. Was there a second?
I will second Leah's motion to waive the municipal code.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it clearly both passes, and it both pass. And again, thank you for collaborating, for acknowledging, for accommodating, and for caring about our community and food and keeping it food-centric. So thank you, Director Themig, and thanks to all the people that came out. And at this time, I think we can actually move forward and close this part of the meeting.
So we're going to actually have food. So if we could take a 15-minute break and come back at 5:45.
Okay, so this meeting is adjourned to the special meeting of the City Council regarding the farmers market and the issues at hand. Thank you.